Okay, this episode is all about the GIMP. All right, so we are going to use a publicly available image. And I'll show you my browser right now. I've got it loaded to flickr.com. This is the NASA image website, and there will be a link to it at the show notes. But we're going to download this set of images right here that I've got my mouse hovering over right now. There's 76 photos. I think the file's about 1 gigabyte in size, but there's a lot of good images in there, and I'm going to be using one of those images for this tutorial. So if you want to download those images and use the one that I'm going to use for the tutorial, we'll probably be using additional images out of that pack in future tutorials. So if you want to grab that. I also have up a link to a website that has an aspect ratio calculator. You're going to want to use this, and there is a link to that in the show notes as well. Alright, so I already have those images downloaded and unpacked. So I've got GIMP open. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to load that file. Go to File, go to Open. And I'm already at the folder where I have downloaded the image, and it's in a PNG. It's a PNG file. I'm going to double click that and load it up. Alright, so there we are. We got the image loaded. If we go up into View, and then we go to Zoom, and then select Fit Image Window, and also the shortcut for that. And I use this shortcut all the time. So it's one you might want to memorize, is Shift-Control-J. So if we click that, it'll maximize our image in our image window within GIMP. Okay, so the reason that I have the aspect ratio calculator open, so for one of the first things that we want to do, and if you right click, you can get the complete menu up here if you just right click. You don't have to go up here to the top. So I'm just going to right click over the image. And then where it says image, I'm going to open up that sub menu, and then I'm going to go down to where it says scale image. Okay, so now we've got our scale image dialog open, and we're going to be working in pixels, which is what it's currently set at for the image size. And then on the X resolution and the Y resolution, it says pixels per millimeter. Well, my display is in pixels per inch, so just click that box, and the very top one, it's pixels per inch, so select that one. You'll see that the X resolution and the Y resolution of this image is 299.999. Okay, so that's 300 pixels per inch. What we want to do is we want to scale and crop this image, and we want to make the file size as small as possible so that the computer uses less memory to load it as our background image. So 300 pixels per inch is a good resolution if you were going to print this image, but it's not a good resolution for just displaying it on your computer monitor. That's way overkill. If you don't know the pixels per inch resolution of your monitor, then just set it for 90. That's a good standard setting resolution for a typical monitor. If you know the exact pixels per inch of your monitor, then set it for that. Now mine is 100. So I'm going to set my X and Y resolution to 100 pixels per inch. Okay, so go ahead and select scale once you get that done. The size of the image, if you look up here where it gives you the name of the file, shows you that it was imported, shows you the color mode, but it also shows you at the end, it shows you the resolution of the image as you have it loaded. So it's 2000 pixels wide by 1160 pixels tall or high. My monitor is 1920 by 1080. So we're going to adjust that so that it will fit my display, and of course you want to do the same thing but set it so that it fits your display. So we'll make those adjustments. But one thing I want to show you is there's a really good way of doing this when you're working with an image that is larger than your display, which is this case. You know, this image is larger than the resolution of my display. So I've got it set here for fixed aspect ratio. I've got that box checked. And I've got the aspect ratio set for 16:9. And a number plus the colon plus the next number gives you the aspect ratio. The aspect ratio of a monitor that has a resolution of 1920 by 1080 is a 16:9 aspect ratio. So if we bring up our aspect ratio calculator again, you can see that I've got 1920 by 1080 in here. 1920 for the width, 1080 by the height. And if you look at the aspect ratio right here, it shows you 16:9. So you guys won't have to compute this yourselves. If you just use the link that I have in the show notes, it'll take you directly to this aspect ratio calculator. So let's say you had a monitor resolution of 1024 by 768. So we'll put in 1024 for the width and 768 for the height. And as you can see, that is an aspect ratio of 4:3. So if you have a monitor that has a resolution of 1024 by 768, you would use that 4:3 as your aspect ratio. So if we go back into GIMP, right here where it says 16:9, you will put in 4:3. And that way when you go to crop the image, it will maintain your aspect ratio. All right, so I'm going to put 16:9 back in there, 16:9. This tool right here at the top right hand corner is your crop tool. If you just hover your mouse over these tools, it'll tell you what they are. What we're going to deal with right now is the crop tool. So I've got that selected. So if I just mouse over the image, I hold down my left mouse button, it turns into a cursor, like a cross. I'm holding down the left button and I'm going to drag. And you see how it scales that box as I move the mouse back and forth while I'm holding it down. It's maintaining the ratio, the fixed aspect ratio of 16:9. So I'm going to take this box, and if you go up here in the corner, you see it highlight yellow. If I left click and hold that, then I can drag it. Because what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to pull in as much of this image as I can while maintaining that aspect ratio. Okay, so I've got as much of the image pulled in as I can get. But as you can see, there's a section down here on the bottom. The image resolution is not 16:9. So now I've got to decide what part of the image do I want to keep and use as my desktop background. Well, there's not a lot going on at the top. It is a star field, but I want to get as much of this nebula in the image as possible. So I'm just going to left click the center and hold it down and then drag that box down. Okay, so now the part that is not going to be cropped or included in the cropping is that little section at the top with the star field. Now that I have the section of the image that I want to use to have it the same aspect ratio as my monitor, I've got it all selected here in my crop tool. Now if I just left click, it goes ahead and crops the image. Now if you look at the top, it shows you'll notice the resolution has changed. It's still the same width, it's 2000. But now the height of the image is 1125 because I cropped out that top section. Alright, so now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and scale it to 1920 by 1080. And so, okay, so now if I right click and scale this, and I'll show you how this aspect ratio works. By going to image, scale image, you can see that our X resolution, Y resolution is still set at 100. Now if I change this width from 2000 to 1920 to match the resolution of my monitor, and I hit tab to go down to the next field, you'll see that it automatically changed it to 1080. So when you crop an image with the correct aspect ratio of your whatever dimensions you need. You know, if you use that aspect ratio tool, when you make your crop, then when you resize the image, all you have to do is put in the width of the image. It will automatically change the height, and it will be the correct dimensions that you're looking for based on your aspect ratio. That is really, really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and select scale. So now the image is the correct size. It's, if you look at the top again, if you look at the top over here, and now it shows that the image size is 1920 by 1080, which is the resolution that we wanted to get it to, the dimensions we wanted to get it to. Okay, so I'm just going to maximize that by holding down the Control Shift and hitting the J key. You can do the same thing over here like we did before. Go to View, Zoom, and then Fit Image to Window. If you make a mistake, all you have to do is go back over here and select Undo. It'll have your last, the last thing that you did that you can undo, and then we'll get into undo history at a later time. So if I wanted to undo my scale image, I just select Undo. Now if you look at the top, it's back to 2000 by 1125. Okay, so if you make a mistake, just go back to Edit and then Undo your last operation. So I'm going to go back and scale this again to the resolution that I need. Scaled it, maximize it in the window, and now it shows 1920 by 1080 again. Okay, so now I'm going to right-click this image and I'm going to export it. Go to File. I'm going to export as, and I've already gone through this process once, so I've already got the file created, and I always like naming my image files not only with the name of the image but the size of the image. So I'm renaming this to 1920 by 1080 and exporting it as a PNG file, and I'm going to select Export down here, bringing that up so you can see it. Export down here. And it's asking me if I want to replace the existing file, and yeah, it's the same file. It's going to bring up the default settings for exporting as a PNG. Just accept those. Those settings are very, very good for PNG files, so it's right into PNG file. All right, so I want to export it in one more format. Like I said, what we want to do is we want to keep the image size as small as possible, so it uses as little memory as needed to load that image as a background image on the desktop. So I'm going to right click it again, and this time I'm going to export it as a JPEG file. Okay, let me bring this in a little bit so you can see it better. Okay, so I'm just going to go up here where the file name is, and I'm going to select JPEG. Now, you could also do that by going down here where it says select file type by extension. And then if you scroll through, you can see all the image formats that GIMP supports. It's phenomenal. You could select JPEG image right here. And as you can see, it still has the same extension. So I'm going to go ahead and select export as a JPEG format. It's asking me if I want to replace it because I've already done it. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and replace it. Now, when it brings up your quality settings up here, when I'm doing smaller files, I usually set the quality for 98%. Now, unlike PNG, which is a lossless format, which means it doesn't lose any of the clarity of the original image, JPEG image file format is a lossy format. So when it compresses a file, it loses a little bit of its clarity, a little bit of its detail. Now, if you set it for about 95%, actually, we'll just go to 90%. What I read somewhere is that if as long as you keep the compression above 85%, the human eye cannot perceive the difference in the image. And in other words, you won't notice the reduction in quality of the image. So I'm just going to go ahead and set it for 90% on the quality. Leave everything else the way it is, and then I'm going to go to export. All right, so now I want to go to my file folder where I just exported these files so I can show you the difference in size of these images. So if we take a look at the original image here, and you look down here at the bottom, it shows you that file is 3 megabytes in size. If we take a look at the PNG file,
and it doesn't lose any of the clarity as the PNG file. It compresses it, but it doesn't lose any of the clarity. It's 2.7 megabytes, so it's slightly smaller than the original file because it did compress it a little bit. And then if we look at the JPEG file, it's 628.9 kilobytes. So that's less than a quarter. Yeah, that's less than a quarter of the size of the PNG file. So it's going to take very little memory in order for this to be loaded as a desktop background. Okay, so now let's see what it looks like. So let's go to the desktop. And I'm going to change my background. And I'm going to add a picture. And then I'm going to go to our tutorial folder where I saved the image file. And there's my JPEG. So I'm going to tell it to open that. And I'm going to select that as my background. And there we are. We have a beautiful star-forming nebula from the James Webb Space Telescope as our desktop background. All right, so that's a wrap on this tutorial. I hope you guys learned something about GIMP today. I plan on doing an entire series of tutorials on the GIMP as well as other applications. Now, I like to take things slowly in these tutorials so that you're not overwhelmed, so I don't have to throw too much at you at one time. I think that is the easiest way to learn. So we're going to go step by step. We will learn progressively more about GIMP as we go. So stay tuned for the next tutorial. And remember, you can create freely. See you next time.